Welcome back to Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price. Chris, there is a nip in the air. Maybe it's appropriate because the Patriots offense, as you wrote about this week, in the third quarter, it has been ice cold. What gives and how can they fix it?
It's across the board. It's not just one thing. Tom Brady has struggled, at least statistically, in the third quarter. They've struggled to run the ball. They've also not really played what you'd call complementary football in the third quarter. The defense has struggled as well. So it's a combination of things. Bill Belichick talked a little bit about it in the press conference today, talked about the fact that there's really no magic bullet that you can take, and you can say, okay, this is how you fix the problem. It's got to be across the board. You got to have better blocking, you got to have better execution, you got to play better defensively.
You mentioned in your piece that they, I believe, ran the ball only 2 times in the last 10 minutes or so of that game. We have said all along, I mean, I wrote about this after the first preseason game in Philadelphia. Are we finally beginning to see maybe the return of the running game to the Patriots? And would that be crucial? Well, it seems like in some of the losses this year, namely in Cincinnati, where they ran the ball only 6 times in the second half, Sunday in New York against the Jets, they're getting away too much from the running game.
They really are. I think it's one of those things where you look at the complete offensive picture over the first 7 games of the season, and you kind of draw some conclusions. In the losses, they've abandoned the run, I think, too early. I think, as your point, what we were talking about earlier in the media workroom, that they only ran the ball twice over the last 7 minutes and not at all in overtime against the Jets. They only ran the ball 6 times in the second half against the Bengals. This despite the fact that it was a one-score game on both occasions. The game was still in doubt. So, there were situations where you could run the ball. The run-pass splits in the losses are really damning, I think, in a lot of ways. I think the Patriots have to get back to running the ball. They have to get back to running the ball consistently, because when they do that, good things happen for this offense.
And the thing that's really hard to understand and really get a grasp of is they have the running backs. They have a lot of variety in the running backs in terms of Stephen Ridley, LeGarrette Blount. They will be getting back eventually Shane Vereen. He is eligible to start practicing this week. Whether he does or not, Belichick said that he wouldn't start on Wednesday, but maybe later in the week. But the personnel there is there for the Patriots to get to the running game.
I wonder, too, how much of that might change with the return of Vereen. I wonder how much they think of him and what kind of regard they hold him in, that they might start running the ball a little bit more when he comes back. Because in his one game this year, they were very run-heavy. In that opener against the Bills, they were able to run the ball, they were able to move the ball consistently as a result. And that's no slight, no disrespect to the other running backs that they have, but I think he offers them something that maybe some of those guys don't have. But yeah, I think ultimately they need to get back to running the ball. They need to get back to running it consistently if they want to have a chance to play deep into June.
And the other thing we should also point out, it is only week number 8, I believe, we're coming up on in the season, and Tom Brady has always mentioned, Bill Belichick has always talked about, judge us in November and December when the weather really changes.
Exactly.
And a lot of the fundamentals of the offense change.
Exactly. This, more than any other season, maybe other than 2006, this offense is really a work in progress. Now, we've talked about that specific to the passing game, but I think you can make an argument for that in the running game as well, because Vereen, they're kind of working without one of their most important offensive options in Vereen. LeGarrette Blount is still in his first year in the system. You're talking about Brandon Bolden and Stephen Ridley, 2 other guys who are very young, relatively early in their NFL career. So it's all kind of coming together, I think, at this point.
Defensive side of the ball, the Patriots welcome back an old friend and certainly one of the more respected players in the locker room a couple of years ago, Andre Carter, defensive end. He played last year with the Oakland Raiders after blowing out his Achilles against the, I believe it was against the Redskins in 2011.
The Broncos.
Oh, the Broncos in 2011, yes, thank you. But certainly he was a big part of that defense in creating pass rush from the edge. Can he approach those kind of numbers and that kind of impact here in New England, or is it too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell, but I do think that they brought him in here for a couple of different reasons. First of all, unless you're Brian Waters, you're not a 34-year-old guy who's getting off the couch and going to be jumping in to play 95% of the snaps. I think you're looking at him to maybe give you 15 to 20 snaps a game, at least at the start, to really kind of work in as a situational pass rusher. Maybe give Ninkovich and Chandler a little bit of a breather in those kinds of situations. I also think, too, that he was brought in here as a mentor for a relatively young defensive line.
Excellent point.
When you're talking about guys in Vince Wilfork and Tommy Kelly, who, in Wilfork's case, is really not around the team on a regular basis because of the injury. Kelly's working through his own injuries. This is a really young defensive front. You're talking about guys like Michael Buchanan, Chandler Jones, Jake Beckett, Marcus Forston, Villano, Chris Jones. All of those guys are relatively young. When you're talking about overall NFL experience, you're bringing a guy like Andre Carter who can kind of mentor him a little bit and work as a guy who can kind of take him under his wing a little bit. And I think that's what we're looking for when you're talking about his overall impact. I think it's going to be almost as important off the field as opposed to on.
We talked about this a little bit after the Jets game on Sunday afternoon. The AFC East is all of a sudden very jumbled, and this suddenly becomes a very critical game in the division, and one in which the Patriots certainly figured a need to protect home field if they're going to want to win the division in the end of the season. The Joe Philbin-led Miami Dolphins started out 3-0, house on fire. Everybody thought maybe this is the year the Dolphins challenge the Patriots. They've lost their last three. What has happened with the Dolphins?
They need to get back to what made them successful. They need to get back to running the ball. They need to, Tannehill's a good athletic quarterback. The other thing, too, is they have not been able to protect him at all. Tannehill is on pace to be sacked 69 times,
That's
which
a lot.
is absolutely absurd when you're talking about a second-year quarterback. You need to do a better job protecting your quarterback. I think that's where the Dolphins have really kind of gotten off track. I think this represents a great opportunity for the Patriots to create some separation in the AFC East and kind of rebound a little bit from what happened last week. They can beat the Dolphins here, and the Bengals can beat the Jets in Cincinnati, which is not unreasonable to expect given the Bengals' quick start. I think you're looking at a situation where the Patriots can put a little bit of separation between themselves and the rest of the AFC East and rebound from what happened last week in North Jersey.
And going into the bye.
Exactly. You always want to feel better about yourself going into the bye. If they hit the bye week at 6-2,
right,
given everything that's happened and given all the setbacks that they've had, the personnel setbacks, the injuries, you go into the bye week 6-2, you got to feel pretty good about yourself because then you start to get guys back. You start to get Vereen back, ostensibly Amendola. Hopefully return sooner rather than later. So you have guys